Show. Pi Ratio, are you in the house? Calling our brother Pi Ratio.
Sister Shanice, can you see me?
Okay, let me find our brother Pi Ratio. Yes, I can see you now. Let me spotlight you, my brother. Greetings, greetings. How are you doing?
I am very well, my sister. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much. I say very well. I've got a little bit of a cold that's trying to get me, but nevertheless, you know, I'm pushing through, sounding a bit croakier than usual. But good to see you in the house. Family, Pi Ratio is one of our Big G Galaxy Alfiwi.net presenters. And he does a math show every Thursday. And I'm always listening in. And it takes me back to my school days. And I just so wish I had a math tutor like Pi Ratio. I would have been a mathematician today, I am sure. So for those young ones coming up today, family, this is the tutor that needs to be tutoring your children, your nephews, your nieces, your grandchildren. I'm telling you. Our brother Pi Ratio is a self-speculative mathematical investigator who applies mathematics in the search for truth, as well as being a presenter on the Big G. Let me, without further ado, go over to our brother Pi Ratio. When you're welcome to, when you're ready, you can share screen as well. But let me allow you, first of all, to introduce yourself to our audience.
Galaxy family, it's just a pleasure to be here, really. You know, to share some knowledge, some mathematical knowledge. I want to big up both Brother Jammers and Brother Charles, who were on before me. You know, they had me hooked. They had me totally hooked. Brother Jammers was nailing it with the words and how numbers are involved, because I was listening to both presentations and the numbers were just firing. Brother Charles, you know, he's certainly making the numbers add up, and it's all about numbers. The call to the TTIP party, it's all about numbers. Whatever he's doing, he needs the numbers. It's all about numbers. And today I want to share with you a mathematical journey as to where numbers originated from. I'm just trying to share my screen now to bring up presentation. I'm allowed to share, am I?
Yes, you are allowed to share. Go to the green button that says share screen.
Okay, it's just doing something.
Yeah, and then once you've gone in there, it should go to Windows. And then you just select the window with your presentation. Yes, here it is. Africans invented mathematics. Love it.
Right. Okay.
We're seeing it. Without further ado, over to our brother Pi Ratio for his presentation. Africans invented mathematics. Woo, woo, woo.
Thank you very much. Thank you. As I was saying, maths is probably despised by many in the population. I would say half the world's population. And irrespective of what anyone may feel and regardless of how you may feel, it's one of the most important sciences of human history. African men are central to when it comes to the study of ancient African history, especially concerning the evolution of our civilization and our sciences. When it comes to one of the most important academic disciplines of all time, mathematics scholars suggest that perhaps it was the African woman that played a pivotal role. Now, many argue as to when and where mathematics originated from. When we look at the facts currently in place,
My apologies. Please rewind and come again. You had dropped some, from the outset, you had dropped some knowledge here. Woman, big up your chest. Are we not talk about? All right, over to you, pi ratio. Take it from the top. Wheel and come again, my friend.
All right. The origin of mathematics, yes. Maths is the cradle of all creation. Let's be very, very clear. The world couldn't move an inch. It couldn't move an inch. When we look at many of the records out there, and people will differ and argue about specific dates, but the facts remains that the earliest signification, indication of mathematics came from Africa. The first equations that we can trace back are 3000 BCE, when pyramids were being built, wonders of the world were being created. The Greeks didn't jump onto the bandwagon until 300 BCE. China, even later, 200 BCE. And when China came on board, they brought in supposedly negative numbers and how to play tricks with numbers. We all know about the magic square where all the numbers add up diagonally, horizontally. That comes from a part of China that were dealing in trickery with numbers. Documentation states that the first zero appeared in India in 628 C. Now, when you dig into that information, you find that they're suggesting that the zero came about in documentation and was being correctly used. And that's the first indication from the documentation that is out there. But we know that the zero was created a lot earlier than that in Africa. And that is another conversation because that deals with the formation of numbers. But as we're just looking at how and where maths came about, I will park that for the time being. Persia came on board in 820 C, bringing a form of algebra, but that was already in place in 3000 BCE in Africa. And when Persia came on board, they also came with mathematical notations, which looks at logarithms. Well, you know. Which looks at logarithms and such. Now, from that time and up to this time, two types of maths out of all of that have been created: pure maths and applied maths. Now, pure maths is made of several sections. The study of numbers that start with natural numbers and what you can do with them, arithmetical operations, and then they move on to stuff like integers. And these are things that contain negative numbers, rational numbers like fractions, so-called real numbers that include numbers like pi. And pi is the ratio between the circumference and the diameter of a circle. You also have infinite decimal points, complex numbers, and a bunch of other stuff. And there are some numbers that have interesting properties. Well, I think they do anyway, like pi and e squared numbers, exponential numbers, because that deals with numbers that are very, very vast. Now, number theory studies the features of everything mentioned previously, like prime numbers, which is used for coding. Many of the codes that you use today is based off of prime numbers. And so with pure maths, the aim really is just to create formulas that are not very meaningful. They give you results, but they are not necessarily meaningful. The stuff you learn at school, at colleges, in many of the universities is a lot of pure mathematics. Applied mathematics now is when we go into industry, and industries sometimes have issues and they're looking for how to resolve things. So for example, if you are a promoter and you have a concert and you want to be able to manage the crowd, how are you going to do that? Well, you need some sort of formula to make your job easier. So you will find a formula that looks at how many of your customers have tickets. Well, you know, those who have tickets and who are seated are probably going to come a little bit later than those who are standing. So you're able to manage the flow of people and things like that. And that's what applied mathematics does. It takes pure mathematics, formulas that are created in the pure mathematics area, and apply it to their industry. Okay, let's move on. So, Timbuktu. Now, Timbuktu plays an important role when it comes to our knowledge of how mathematics was used in African civilization. Now, this is not to say that mathematics was not used throughout African society, but the manuscript at Timbuktu gives us the clearest proof of its use and its function. Now, even though Timbuktu and the University of Sankore were both founded by African women, I'll say that again, even though Timbuktu and the University of Sankore were both founded by African women, there is little evidence concerning women's involvement or contribution in the academic spaces, in the scholarly areas, from the documentation that is currently out there. Now, the importance, Now, the importance of Timbuktu to the African heritage is priceless. Now, it's due to its historic position in Western Africa as a major economic city during the 15th and 16th century. This indicates that they are very, very capable. They were very, very capable of managing and calculating significantly large amounts of numbers and monies, transactions. So when you come across this information, it dispels the myth straight away that we didn't have a clue how to deal with money in large quantities or understand mathematics. Now, all of the intellectual powerhouses of Timbuktu, including a brother by the name of Mohammed Baga. These men, him and many of his students, were the ones who at the time were making decisions and creating a mathematical, how do I put it, group, so to speak, of scholars, these brothers, who I came across a couple of years ago, which I didn't have any recollection of before. Mohammed Baga, you can look him up and you can check out any information about him. But what I want to say from that is, even though that group was all men, the ideology of these brothers, which was present for our African culture at the time, afforded women various freedoms, giving them access and affirmations, places and spaces that would surprise many of us today. Now, the greatest proof of this was in the Nile Valley, where women had many rights and privileges under state law. You can look this up, it's out there. Anything I'm telling you, it is already out there. Now, this was a concept that we have only recently adopted today. And when I say recently, I'm highlighting the ratio between the time then and now. Now, contrary to belief, the oldest manifestation of a mathematical concept was discovered in Africa amongst the Lubombo and Ashanga bones. And with one of these discoveries, according to one scholar, the needs and the concerns of African women spearheaded the development of the mathematical sciences. Discovered in 1960 and dating back to around 8,500 BC. The Ashanga bone is one of the world's oldest mathematical tools in human history. Now, this piece of artifact is kept in the Royal Institute for National Sciences in Belgium and can only be seen by special arrangement. Can you believe that? The Ashanga bone was found in the ancient mountainsides near the Lake Edward region, present day Uganda. Also known as, I suppose, the Dominican Republic of Congo, I think. The bone is the name. It's named after the Ashanga people who inhabited the area sometime between the 7th and the 10th century BC. In looking up these people, there is not a lot of information that I've come across as of yet, but what I do know is that they were exceptional hunters, fishermen, and farmers in their settlement, in their area, before a volcanic eruption destroyed their village. And that is the Ashanga bone. Now, the Ashanga bone was originally considered a tally record, but the recent microscopic analysis has revealed additional notch marks, including that it has been used as a lunar calendar. Now, the bone itself has a quartz writing tool at one end, while the body of the bone is where the etching is, with 3 rows of notches marked with each row in its own, each row has its own mathematical significance. Yeah. The first row is a series of calculations based on the number 10. The second row contains prime numbers between 10 and 20. Prime numbers are what we use for our coding to enter your computer. The coding is based off of prime numbers. The third line is a multiplication table. Now, the Ashanga Bone is an important indication of the scientific progress. As they would suggest, it's an old age. It's an old Stone Age. People would suggest it's an old, or some would say it's an old Stone Age style, whatever terminology they want to put on it. The proof is here. Calculation started right here. Now, with the advancement of trade in society, knowledge of mathematics and units of measure became increasingly important. Basic calculations were used to predict the effects of drought, floods, crop yields, and those things. And I hope you're taking note here, because they're using mathematical calculations to predict things. And that is very, very poignant. Numbers is not just about adding, subtraction. They are just the signs within the numbers. When you have a number, you apply the signs depending on the condition or the circumstance to give you an indication. They were using numbers to foresee drought. That goes to tell you how heavy numbers really are. Floods, crop yields. Imagine if you were able to harness numbers in that respect. Be able to look at yourself, predict what you're all about. Powerful, very, 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 very powerful. We don't realize how powerful numbers really are, right? With the discovery of the Ashanga Bone, the long-held assumption that the African societies were slow to develop mathematical technology was now disproved. What many of our ancestors were predicting is what technology is doing today with computers, using certain apps and codes. They had the original code. I'll get to that. In numbers, we are very powerful. When we pool our knowledge together, we are unstoppable. If we don't understand numbers, it's very difficult to understand ourselves. All of what you're seeing here today is all to do with some form of coding. The Ashanga Bone had notches in it, which gave those people, they had a coding system. Everything is about code. We as individuals have a coding system. Right, now the significance of the Lubumba Bone is that it's the oldest expression of mathematics on the planet. And it's also theorized that the woman were its primary inventors. So these notches that you're actually seeing here, that you saw on the bone, so on the next page, they were all related to the woman. She was the one that was doing the calculations at the time. In the 1970s, during excavations near what was today called Border Cave, which is in the Lubombo Mountains between South Africa and Swaziland, a small piece of a fibula of a baboon was found and marked with 29 clearly defined notches. Now the bones, which resembles a bit like calendar sticks, are still used by the San people in Namibia today. And it's ranked with the oldest mathematical object known to mankind. Now, as mentioned before, it's been suggested that since the Lubombo bone was used as a lunar phase counter, because that's what it was, women may have been the first mathematicians, because they were keeping track of their menstrual cycle, which requires a lunar calendar. So our ancestors had a, I'm actually one behind, sorry. Now, a final point on the Lubombo bone, and it speaks for itself. Now, the Lubombo bone bears witness to the existence of a very sophisticated accounting system, which enables us to master time. And it is the first visible hint of the emergence of calculation in human history. And that is a quote from Abdul Karim Bagayura. Now, since one of the functions of both the Lubombo bone and the Ashanga bones are believed to have been used as lunar calendars, the agency of African women in this mathematical process seems very plausible, regardless. And you will have naysayers and negative individuals who will bear to differ. But my philosophy has always been, you put on the table what you think you know. And anyone who joins the table to remove what you have put there has to come with something more significant. And it's as simple as that. In whatever we're doing, and even on this particular platform, you know, you have amazing individuals who have come along and they put forward their level of understanding. And you will have many naysayers who will disagree in certain aspects. And that's fine, that's not a problem. But the key for us to get together is to come with your level of understanding. And don't be embarrassed, because ego plays a major part in why we do not come together. And ego is a formula. Ego is equal to 1 over knowledge. Ego is equal to 1 over knowledge. Everything is mathematical. We need to be very, very clear. Once we understand that, we're able to pass that on to our children. Only then will we begin to see the difference that we know we are capable of. while we stay individually, as Brother Charles alluded to earlier, we're like sitting ducks. And so it's now, as I mentioned, we believe that the Ashanga is a lunar calendar based off of the African woman's menstrual, and making her the original mathematician. Now, especially since we see a very clear trail of culture and civilization emerging from Africans within the interior, moving further north, influencing some of the more recognizable African states in ancient times. I've got a picture of, just a simple picture of artifacts that have been left behind, that have been excavated, and there is a trail. There is a clear trail of our culture and our civilization, right? So the question is, are you convinced that not only did Africans invent mathematics, but the African woman may also have been the first mathematician in Africa? I would certainly be interested in your feedback, and I view and your views and your comment. And it's really important that we all know ourselves, know thyself. And by knowing ourselves, it really is as simple as, when I say simple, as understanding your code. Brother Charles, and I'm highlighting Brother Charles because he's the most recent. Brother Charles mentioned it. Through his life, he went through went down certain avenues through certain phases, and he realized where his calling was and what have you. Your code gives you your calling. Your code tells you what you're supposed to be doing. Many of us go the wrong way and try different vocations, numerous vocations, for so many years, waste so much time doing things we don't like because we don't understand our code. The brothers in the earlier slide show you they can predict, foresee, using numbers. If we are able to harness numbers, because we belong to numbers, numbers are from us. If we're able to harness what is from us, then we will begin to know thyself. And then we will begin to come together and make things happen as one. Thank you, family. I really appreciate you.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
We thank you, Pi Ratio. What a phenomenal presentation. That was so insightful, so educational. And we hear your question. Are you convinced that the African woman was the inventor of mathematics? You said you want to hear what our listeners have to say on that. So come on, family. If you would like to make a contribution, please, by a show of your hand, you can go to the bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen and go into reactions, and there you can put your hand up and I will bring you in. Alternatively, you can put your responses, your questions, your comments about the presentation in the chat. So Surila says, amazing info. So thankful to our brother, to our brother. Perhaps he can show slide 2 and 3 again at the end. Thank you. And she also adds, does our brother Pi Ratio have a website where we can learn from?
All right. I will put all the information in the chat, all the contacts in the chat, not a problem. But yes, I do. Yes.
Absolutely brilliant. So we'll be looking out for that. Pauline has got her hand up. Take yourself off mute, Sister Pauline. Your opportunity to put your question to Pi Ratio.
Hi, Pirate Ratio. I really enjoyed your presentation. What I'm concerned about is the advent of AI and how our young people can acquire those skills, those scientific, mathematical skills, so they can be players, leaders in this new technology.
It's a beautiful question. I was having a conversation with one of the brothers recently, and my queen, and we were looking at the different mathematical skills required for the different vocations. And with regards to AI, which is artificial intelligence, you are looking at a level of coding which requires algebra, binomials, probabilities. There are a core section of maths that you need to understand. And what I have and am in the process of putting together is vocational mathematics. So for example, if you want to be an IT security, what is the maths required for that? If you want to be a hairdresser, what is the maths for that? If you want to be an architect, what is the maths for that? I believe people are more interested in that sort of maths than being told they need to learn this vast array of mathematics, and half of it, which is pure, which is not of no relevance, serves no purpose. How do we get our children involved in AI and understanding? Well, letting them know, showing them AI in its purest, what it does, and then showing them the maths behind that. And that is the key. Algebra is the key that unlocks that door. Algebra, because algebra is a big basket. And within algebra, you will find the many, many disciplines that deal with AI, artificial intelligence, and coding and that sort of stuff.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much for that. Imani says, this is phenomenal. I'm learning so much, and it's only just gone 11. Please, can we have this as a regular Zoom broadcast on a Saturday and Sunday morning, please, Galaxy Management. Not expecting an answer immediately, but one to consider perhaps. Seems more accessible for some people. Blessed love. Please apologize for my voice today. Sonia said, vocational maths. That sounds like much sense. Okay, put your hand up if you've got any questions for our brother Pi Ratio. Oh my gosh. Well, in answer to your question, my brother Pi Ratio, I am absolutely convinced that women were indeed the inventors of mathematics, and I think so for practical reasons. For monitoring the menstrual cycle, and for also monitoring our fertility, the days of our fertility. So I can see that happening, and then it, going on from there. In terms of how far back, wow. It probably goes back hundreds of thousands of years, I suspect, because, what we do know is that as a people, we have been gazing the stars, we've been monitoring the rising of the sun, the planets up there. We've been rising, making a note of the solar eclipse, etc. And that's all in those real ancient calendars, isn't it? So they date back hundreds of thousands of years. So we've been doing mathematical calculations. I always think Prophet Quaker often talks about it taking about almost 27,000 years for the globe to do a full cycle on its axis, and our ancestors actually mapped that out. So they would need to have monitored that at least a couple of times, I would imagine, before actually drawing those conclusions. And so on that calculation alone, we're talking about hundreds, at least 50,000 years, probably more, of mathematics. Can I hear your thoughts on that, please, Brother Pi Ratio?
Absolutely right. The processual cycle, I think it's 25,946 years, almost approximately 20.
Sorry, I'm mute people. Yeah, family, please remember to put yourself on mute as you come in. Thank you so much.
Sorry, the processual cycle that Chief Baduti just mentioned about, I think it's 25,900 and something years, which is approximately 26,000 years, which is the cycle that he's referring to. And that is very, very key, because I mentioned earlier about code. Now, what we need to really understand as a people, that every one of us is coded. Now, what do I mean by ratio? Well, I'll tell you what I mean. And I'm going to keep it very simple. When you purchase any item, regardless of how silly it is, it has a barcode. Now, that barcode tells you where it originated from, what it's made of, what it does, what its purpose is, and whatever else, even how many are still left in stock. Now, all of that coding has to come from somewhere. Now, we have Morse code. Where did that come from? We have barcodes. Now, this is just for items. When you order a book, when you order a box, whatever you order, it has a barcode. When you come into this world as a human, H-U-E, human, you have a code. You have been given a code. You only get that code when you get here. Let's be very, very clear. And we don't understand this. This is why numbers is very, very important. And we mentioned the celestial planes, where there is an axiom in mathematics, so above, so below. We know that saying. That is ratios. So above, so below. When you look at a ratio, when you look at division, and you're trying to calculate. So this is all to do with mathematics. And so our code, if you know what your code is, then you know what you're supposed to be doing. You know where you're supposed to be going. So how do you know what your code is? Well, some will say, oh, it's your name, it's where you live, and it's that. And I am not here to say it's not that. But as a mathematical investigator, the only thing about us that hasn't been tampered with is when we came into this world. That date, when we came into this world. Our names are not our names. Where we live, it's not necessarily by choice. Let's keep it real. And when you're doing maths, you can't add things that don't belong to that formula. You're just going to get nonsense. Anything you're doing has to be underpinned and regularly tested by numbers. Now, with regards to our code, that is our Earth Day. When we came here, you were given that baton. You were given that by the Creator. It was passed down by the ancestors. That's your code. You're allowed in. Now you have to decipher that code. But if you don't know you have that code, then you wander around aimlessly, which many of us have been doing for thousands and thousands of years. Let's keep this very real. Now, I have just written a book, and it goes live January, and it's called The Hueman Code. The Hueman Code, and it's looks at the code that we have, that was given to us, and how we decipher it. Because once you have your code, and you have to understand that every number is significant. Every number is significant. Sometimes many of us are trying to be the number one when your code says you are supposed to be the best number two there is. But because you're trying to be number one, and if you are the best number two, you're a number one in your own right. Mm-hmm. I could go on and on about this, but I just and that's what I'm doing. I want people to understand that maths is not just this nonsense about working out silly questions that have no sense. It's not just about applied maths that applies to systems. It's about applying it to you, your life. You were given your own barcode, and you need to understand it so you can use it to go forward, to open the doors that you want opened. And it's as simple as that. And if you understand the numbers, you will understand other people's codes. So then you understand why you don't get on with this person, or why this one irritates you, or why you can only spend 20 minutes in this person's time space. It's all to do with the numbers. And if we understand the same way that our ancestors harnessed it when they predicting all of these of floods and everything else, if we're able to do that, then hey, as Brother Charles says, there ain't no stopping us now.
There ain't no stopping us indeed. Once we are able to decipher our oh, wow. I wish I knew how to decipher my code. We're going to have to talk some more on that.
Definitely.
Yeah, brilliant. Let's see what we've got in the Imani Day says. Does Pi Ratio do individual readings on people's codes, please?
Okay. Let me just tell you this. I am a mathematical investigator. I didn't set out to, I originally was just somebody who just loved to be in front of a whiteboard and work out formulas. That was really what I really loved. But then Chief Maduti, he said something to me. He said, Brother Pi, the ancestors have told me, you know, you're supposed to be digging deeper into this. He didn't have to say that twice because it was as if that was a catalyst, a light bulb moment for me. And since I haven't stopped, and I found that I'm able to use numbers to unravel things. I have a Thursday show on the Big G, and it's called Triangle Thursday. And why do I say triangle? Because any problems we have in life, if you put it in the triangle, you can solve it. Did you know that? Because the triangle will give you the problem. It will also give you the cause. Who is feeling the pain from the problem? And by having those two, you're able to resolve it. It's algebra. Once you know two components, it gives you the answer to the third component. It is algebra. And this is why I go on about this every week when I do this, do the show. But yes, I do numbers. It's in the book, you know, and I do dig deep, but you have to be warned. Now listen carefully. Numbers is not no joke. Numbers takes no prisoners. It doesn't business about emotions. It doesn't care about egos. It doesn't care who you are. It deals with actual facts, and it is a sliding scale. When I found out my own numbers, I was, it was a bit like looking in the mirror. I couldn't disown it. Even the nasty side. And I'm saying that because numbers, I've done numbers, it's made people cry. This is not airy-fairy. I want people to understand this. You know, our ancestors were powerful. They created mathematics to align themselves with nature. The Wazungu now, they're using mathematics to control nature. Can you see the difference? And so you have to understand that, yes, the numbers, I can go into your business and I can tell you about yourself, but you have to be ready to admit and don't allow the formula of ego, which is equal to 1 over knowledge, to wash you. Because once you get your numbers, you have to do something about it. And there we have it. So yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Absolutely brilliant. And just wrapping up now, because we've got our next presenter lined up to come in soon with a conversation and a discussion on relationships and much more. But before we do, a couple of people are asking, do you have a book? And I think you mentioned you do. And if so, where can they get a copy? Kimani says, preserve me 3 books, my elder, powerful presentation.
It's coming out in January, in the next week or two. It's called The Hueman Code, and it takes you on an amazing journey of how this all came about and the tools that I use and how numbers came about and how the Black woman's womb is the formation of numbers because it's a 0, so above, so below. Yes, it goes into all of that because from the 0, the womb, you get a dot, and that dot is a cell, and it duplicates. And it creates number 2. You see how this all works? So above, so below. So when you come down on Earth now, you have the 0. And from the 0, formulation kicks in, which creates the number 1. I could go on and on, but I won't because I'm mindful of time.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I'm echoing what's been said in the chat. Fantastic.
I will put the information in the chat. Don't worry.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
family, Piratio, just remind them when they can catch your show live and direct on the Big G Galaxy FBE.net.
I'm on. I have the luxury of being on every Thursday between the hours of 10 a.m. to midday. Every Thursday between the hours of 10 a.m. to midday, Triangle Thursday.
Wonderful, wonderful. And family, I can assure you it's a wonderful journey that he takes us on every Thursday.